How this little guy became Sinbad the Wonder Corgi. Our story actually begins back in 2016 with this little guy, Murphy. One day we'll talk about the story of Murphy, but that's not today. Today we'll simply let it be that Murphy became my best friend and was literally the happiest dog, maybe even the happiest being I've ever met. We had adopted him in 2016, and he was living the life as my best friend and pretty much the king of the house until one day all of that changed. My best friend and roommate adopted a 6-pound, 6-month-old Chiweenie named Nemo. For 6 days and 6 nights, Nemo tried and tried and tried to be Murphy's friend, and Murphy didn't want anything to do with him. On the 7th day, about 5:45 in the morning, I was in the kitchen making breakfast for everyone, and I dropped a pan. I spun around and saw the two of them on the steps just like this, and a friendship was born. Actually, that's not true. They didn't become best friends. They became brothers. They ate together. They slept together. They played together. They walked together. They did everything as a team. In July of 2019, my world was shattered. My best friend passed with almost no notice. We took him to the vet that morning, and by that afternoon, he had been put down. He had developed a huge inoperable tumor, and there was nothing that could be done. I'm sorry, but 3.5 years later, it hurts like it did that day. But it didn't just hurt me. Nemo was crushed. I wasn't sure what to do. I wasn't sure I wanted a new dog at all, and I definitely didn't want one right away. I was really hurting. But as much as I was hurting, Nemo was hurting worse, and we made the decision to look into another dog after 2 to 3 weeks of Nemo moping around the house. I had developed an affinity for corgis as Murphy was quite a bit corgi, mostly Chihuahua, but quite a bit corgi. I had also fallen in love with Gatsby the Corgi from the Vlog After College YouTube channel. So we set out looking for corgis. We wanted to adopt if at all possible, as that's what we've always done with our cats and now our dogs. We were having trouble finding an adoptable corgi within driving distance. They were a very popular breed at the time, and we kept coming up empty. However, we ran across a breeder who was about 30 minutes away who happened to have 2 corgis that were beyond her typical 8 weeks where she sold them. She actually had marked them down, and the price was reasonable enough we decided to go take a look. That's when we met Sinbad. It wasn't that we were looking for a bargain. Frankly, truth be told, what we spent on Sinbad's medical expenses his first few months made him more expensive than just about any dog we could have looked at. We just felt his life prospects weren't looking great since he was several weeks outside of her traditional selling age, and they didn't seem real interested in him at the breeder. When she first brought him out to us and sat him down, he was adorable. He crawled into my wife's purse and we were sold. After spending a half hour taking care of paperwork and other things, he was ours. He rode on my shoulder the entire way home. Everything was great until he met Nemo. All of our hopes of Nemo being excited to have a new little brother were dashed within 5 seconds. Nemo didn't want anything to do with him. This lasted for weeks and weeks and weeks. Sinbad would try and try to play the same way Nemo had tried and tried to play with Murphy, but it wouldn't work. Nemo was still pining for Murphy, frankly, as was I to an extent, but I was excited to have my new corgi, and we were quickly bonding with each other. My favorite moment of him the first few weeks was every morning when I got up and helped my wife get ready for work. I would be sitting on the floor, and he would run to the end of the bed and literally jump into my arms. The first time it was quite the surprise, but after that, I looked forward to it every morning, and it continued up until the time when he reached about 30 pounds, at which point he quit jumping. Probably a good move for both of us. Eventually they did bond. I had started to think it wasn't going to happen, but after a few weeks it did. But it wasn't the same. When Nemo and Murphy bonded after those few days, Murphy was immediately the protective big brother, and Nemo was the annoying little brother. It was the cutest thing I'd ever seen. When Nemo and Sinbad bonded, it was almost like an employee-boss relationship with Nemo playing the boss. Things went Nemo's way. If Nemo didn't want to play, they didn't play. If Nemo didn't want to share, they didn't share. If Nemo wanted both bones, well, sorry, Sinbad, you're giving up your bone. Sinbad started to grow. We had been told by the breeder to expect him to be perhaps 20 pounds. Well, the first time we took him to the vet took a look at him and said, no, he'll be about 40 pounds. So we weren't really sure what to believe, although we leaned towards the side of the vet. Well, needless to say, the vet was right, and Sinbad today is 44 pounds. Though we could stand to lose 5-6 pounds, pretty much the vet was right and the breeder was wrong. We kind of thought as Sinbad grew that Nemo might become a little more subservient to Sinbad, but if anything, it's become worse. He still runs the show, and Sinbad still pretty much does what he says. Don't take that the wrong way, though. They are good friends, and for the most part, they get along as good as any two dogs could. Every now and then, though, Nemo puts him in his place. So, how is Sinbad today? Well, obviously, he's the star of this channel, along with his adopted brother Huxley, who's approximately a year or so younger than Sinbad and was a rescue, as are the other dogs. You'd think with those extra large corgi ears that he grew into and those extra large corgi paws that he grew into, he would be a very well-behaved dog. Unfortunately, you would be wrong. While he can hear a pin drop at a mile away and is barking at the door as soon as it happens, my voice, most of the time, he has, I guess, what you'd call selective hearing and kind of does what he wants. When push comes to shove, he listens, but boy, he will push you just as far as any toddler could push any parent in history. As far as the other dogs, those will be stories for another day if anybody wants to hear them. I guess we'll see how this vlog goes and go from there. I do want to finish on two notes. One, this is the first vlog I've done, and boy, it was hard. Part of it, the moments and the memories of Murphy, but mostly the amount of work that goes into it. For those of you that put out vlogs on a regular basis, kudos to you. I underestimated the effort it took. A special shout out to Ryan Lung and Gatsby the Corgi. Gatsby, keep fighting. We love you. And you've been a great inspiration for us, both to get a corgi, to keep a corgi, to raise him, to love him, and to cherish him. Thank you. We're gonna leave here with a few more videos of Murphy, as I miss him so much. And that's it. Thank you. And if anybody's listened and watched this far, thank you so much. Want to go to the park? Nemo, Murphy, do you guys want to go to the park? Do you guys want to get out?